Welcome to this edition of In-Depth Alaska. I'm Tracy Sinclair. On Friday, January 31st, a group of skiers were in the backcountry near Turnagain Pass. A skier went about 200 feet down East Groundhog Peak when the movement triggered an avalanche. The skier got caught up in the slide and was carried about 1,200 feet downhill. Rafael Pease was part of the same group and participated in the rescue. Digital Content Manager Joey Klecka sat down with Rafael to talk about what happened that day and why Pease says the rescue could have happened hours earlier. Pease's statements and opinions are his own and do not represent Alaska's news source. We are seeking a response from the agencies involved. Please check alaskasnewssource.com for those details.
So Rafael, you are a filmmaker, a professional snowboarder. What were you doing? And this happened Friday, right?
Friday afternoon.
Friday afternoon. So what were you doing? And just kind of take a start there. Like, what were you doing in the mountains?
So pretty much Friday we just went backcountry skiing with a group of friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the location for this, where was it?
It's a drainage at the end of Turnagain Pass called Lynx Creek off of Johnson Trail, and the mountain's called East Groundhog Peak.
Yeah. And it seemed like it was also known, had another name, right?
I guess the skier community calls the Captain's Chair, the face of that side of the mountain.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't know, there's too many names, but it's all like different drainages and you follow up the peak. Yeah.
Right, and I know obviously Turnagain Pass is like a popular place for backcountry skiing. That leading in the Johnson Pass there, right? There's also, I mean, how often do people how often do people ski on the mountain that you were on? Or that this took place on?
I can't really guess because I'd say it's rare that people ski there compared to how much people ski the other parts of Turnagain Pass. But I don't know, I'd say Turnagain Pass is the most popular place that people backcountry ski in Alaska, and that peak on Turnagain Pass is probably one of the least skied.
Okay,
for obvious reasons of high consequence terrain.
Right, so this is not a place that people tend to hit up a lot. Is it just for the most expert class of skiers, would you say, or?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say expert, but just experienced people, because things can't go wrong, but when they do, you have to be prepared for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Friday afternoon, you were out there, and there were two groups, I understand?
I mean, there's a bunch of people out there. There's one trailhead, and people park there. They go wherever they want. In my group, there were 6 of us, and it's such a small community here in Alaska of backcountry skiers who go into those places that there's a high chance 80% of the people in the parking lot. So you chat real quick. Where are you going? And you share information like what radio channel are you on? Where are you going? Half of it's to talk about how's the snow, get any beta and information, but also to assist each other if things go south. Yeah. And it's just like trailhead parking lot talk for the most part.
Okay. How many? But what was this group, and what was the group that your friend was with?
He was in our group. There's 6 of us. Yeah.
Okay.
4. Half of us were skiers, another half were snowboarders. Yeah.
What was? Were you guys just out for a day of fun, or was there like you filming for something?
No,
or?
just we're hanging out a day for fun. The sun's out, and we just wanted to go ski some stuff. Nothing more than that, really.
Gotcha. Did you know? Were you aware of if there were any known dangers as far as that day? Were there any avalanche alerts or anything like that, or were you concerned with?
The Chugach Abbey did forecast that there's moderate to considerable danger in certain aspects in the Kenai Mountains, kind of like that part of Turnagain Pass. And, I take what they say with a grain of salt, because every 100 feet in the mountain, whether you're going up or down, left or right, and aspect changes, the snowpack and the conditions change quite a bit. So I use what they say I combine what they say with the information I have in the mountains, and then what we find that day of, to make a decision on what we end up doing, if we ski or if we don't, or we go somewhere else. But we were all aware of the reality. I mean, everyone in my group, including myself, we ski quite a bit, so we know what the snow's doing for the most part.
Mm-hmm. But there wasn't any particular concern on this day, maybe?
No, besides it being cold and windy up high, you know, no real concerns. It is one of the highest peaks out there, so it's natural for it to have some wind at the top, but we didn't really have many concerns. We tend to like ski on the high point of most of this terrain to avoid the gullies, because that's where the snow naturally funnels down. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we had a big discussion and conversation about how we were going to approach the mountain, if we were going to turn around and go ski something else, or, you know, there's 100 different plans and we adapt to them. Yeah. And if we don't ski anything, it's not the worst case. We just go back home and share a beer early. So.
Right. And were you skinning up there?
We took snow machines out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's quicker to get up.
Yeah. I prefer to split board most of the time, but a lot of my friends don't like walking that much, so yeah. We'll take snow machines out.
And you were you were snowboarding on this day?
Yeah.
Okay. And your friend was skiing?
The one that was in the accident, he's a skier.
Skier. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. So then I think according to the report, this was like, I'm trying to remember what it said. It was like 1:30 in the afternoon, roughly, something like that.
Yeah, he started his descent at like 1:31. Yeah.
Okay. And were you filming this at all when this happened?
No, I mean, we had our phones and that was it. So there was 4 of us at the top. I was on a different line, maybe 1,000 feet further on the ridge. And then he was up there with 2 other people on the same line. And then 2 of our other party members were at the base of the mountain. So I had visuals from one side, and I was going to drop 4th because I was just on a whole different face and I was more wind protected. And yeah, the skier who was in the incident skied 2nd. And there's a lot of theories or kind of mental states that people go through that the mountain is safer if you end up skiing 2nd, but there could be 100 tracks on the peak and they could still avalanche. It just depends on making the turn in the wrong or right spot and how you approach things, if you ski fast or slow. There's so many factors involved, and yeah, I mean, it could happen whenever, if you're first or last, pretty much.
So you were watching this from the same slope, like the same mountain. You were on the mountain with them, right?
Yeah, so pretty much it's a big flat face, and there's a bunch of different lines you could ride, and I was on, if you're looking at it, I was about 1,000 feet further to the right on the ridge from where they were.
And so just describe in detail as you can, kind of seeing this all play out in front of you.
So I could only see the top 5th or 6th of the line, because then it changed aspects and I was on the other side of the ridge. So pretty much he started skiing down. Probably 15, 20 seconds in, I hear radio call like, hey, there's an avalanche. And, you know, not everyone's on the radio yelling because you got to keep calm and try to figure out what's going on. So what I did initially was I unstrapped my snowboard. I talked to the guy who was still at the top. I jumped on the snow machine, went down the mountain, and I was just hearing the conversation that the crew at the bottom was having, which it wasn't much talking. It was just like, hey, keep eyes on him. 2 of the other party members jumped on snow machines to the apron, the bottom of the line, to try to find him as quick as possible. Because you don't know if you're going to come to a burial site or, you know, a dead body or someone who needs help. Fortunately, he didn't die on impact in the rocks, and he wasn't buried in an avalanche. So that made the whole rescue that much quicker. The first person to arrive to the skier was probably within less than a minute of the whole incident happening from the beginning, which is a pretty quick response. And then the second person was maybe 30 seconds behind that, and I was about 4 minutes from the beginning of the incident because I had to go 4 or 5 miles all the way around the mountain to get to him. And Yeah, once they showed up, the first two people, he was still sliding down the apron of the mountain, which is about 40 degrees. I'm not aware if he was sliding head first. I don't know if it was on his back or on his face. So they had to grab him, stop him, rotate him, and he was spitting quite a bit of blood. He bit his tongue on the impact. But when I showed up, I saw him in a sitting position, not knowing what was going on. So I grabbed my med kit and just started administrating as much medical support as I could to stabilize him. And then I rated the rest of the team, kind of trying to give some instructions on, okay, we got another party member up high. We got two other people from a different crew who were down there already, and they witnessed the whole thing. And then we had one more person in our crew at the bottom. So it was, everyone kind of needs a task, so things work out pretty efficiently. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did. Within maybe 10 minutes of the incident, we already had a full evaluation of the patient. He didn't have any compound fractures or any noticeable spinal injuries. Nothing that was so severe where we had, a matter of 10 to 15 minutes before he would die. So he was in stable condition. I gave him about 10 minutes to see if it was, the adrenaline talking, and to see sometimes people get better. You could assist them getting out of the backcountry, and you save a lot of time doing an evacuation with a helicopter. Mm-hmm. But his situation got worse. The adrenaline wears off, and he was feeling a lot of pain. So I'd say from the avalanche happened at 1:30, and maybe at 1:45, 1:50, Travis, who was in the second party, him and I knew that there was service at the top of the mountain, 5G, LTE, full service. So that makes the whole communication process way quicker than using your satellite device to send a message, and then you got to text people, and you never know what's going to happen. It takes a really long time. It takes a few minutes for the message to send, and then a few minutes for the message to receive, and it's super slow. So I knew the best opportunity we had to clearly communicate was to call on the phone. So I was with a patient on the radio, and Travis was on top of the ridge on the phone. I told him that, the patient is stable, but we're definitely going to need a hoist line to evacuate. And I instructed the rest of the crew who was up there with me to start digging a huge platform next to the patient, because the safer it is for the rescuers, the easier everything is, and it's not like a multi-hour process to get someone out.
A platform made of snow.
Yeah, just cutting out a shelf in the apron so it's flat. Mm-hmm. Since we're at a 40 degree slope, right, it's really hard for people to just show up, long line out of the helicopter with a basket and transport the patient. So they started digging. We dug about 15 foot deep by 15 feet wide and 15 feet long platform, pretty big. Yeah. But we knew that we couldn't land a helicopter on the slope because it's dangerous for the helicopter, and we don't want to put anyone else at danger. And we knew we couldn't move the patient, and that was obvious within the first 15 minutes that was obvious after 15 minutes of the incident, but it was obvious. Okay. So essentially, I made it clear to Travis, who was in communication with 911, that we needed a hoist line. And what I've experienced in the past when I've been part of other rescues is when someone asks for a hoist line, it's not like you show up without one and see if you could figure it out. So the main issue in this whole situation was the miscommunication in the inner workings of different agencies, and that caused a great delay in the evacuation of the patient. So that's like a whole nother topic if you want to get into it. But
did that frustrate you?
It was frustrating because he could have died if he had any worse injuries, and it also put the rest of my team in a terrible situation. Luckily, we're all pretty competent mountain people, and you know, we could get out of the mountain in pitch black, which is what we ended up doing, but it's not ideal because the probability of another accident happening in the dark, it goes up a little bit more. And you don't want someone laying there in negative 14-degree weather from 1:30 p.m. to 6:30. So it's 5 hours of laying there.
Yeah, so 5 hours is what, you know, roughly 5 hours or so is what it ended up being from the moment the slide happened to when he was hoisted out. No, I think was it a National Guard? Or,
it was
the
the PJs from, the National Guard.
And so, yeah, maybe we can get into that a little more, but so the slide takes place and you don't see, it sounds like it kind of went out of view for you, the actual avalanche where he was caught up in it, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was out of view. I could show you on my phone what I was filming, but pretty much I was standing, if you're looking at the mountain 1,000 feet to the right, and the line that they were skiing kind of goes off a ridge, and then it starts convexing, so it rolls over off to the left if you're looking at the peak. So I was on a whole different aspect, different line. And even the people on top of the line couldn't see because it rolls over. So the only people who had view of the skier were the rest of the group who was already at the bottom.
Okay. And there were, from what I understand, it sounds like there's multiple videos out there, like people had their phones out or maybe cameras, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know Travis was filming with his drone. Okay. And people have their phones, you know, everyone's filming everything these days, but it's not that people were skiing to be filmed, it's just you like filming your friends and sharing it with them, right. So that wasn't a factor, it's just an accident that happened. Right. Yeah.
Well, so what I'm just wondering, you know, this is, you know, you're riding down to the site where the, you know, after it happens and you're hearing what they're saying on the radio, right? Like, what was your concern level? Like, what was going through your head, I guess? At what point did you realize that this was a serious incident?
Pretty much once someone on the radio says avalanche, it's a pretty serious incident. You know, most of the time, if it's all about the terrain. And the type of terrain that I like to ride, if someone says avalanche, it's pretty serious because snow at a very steep pitch moves really fast. And sometimes all it takes is an inch deep of an avalanche to pick you up and just throw you off the mountain. So when someone says avalanche, what you do is you don't get on the radio and you start panicking. You don't want 6 people, 7 people on the radio yelling. Yeah. So what you do is you listen. There's no point in micromanaging your team members and being like, okay, tell me if you see him, tell me where is that. You just listen. And probably within 30 seconds of the word avalanche, I already had my board off. I was running up mountain, maybe 100 feet to jump on my friend's snow machine and going down the mountain. And while I was going down, maybe it took me 4 minutes to get to where he was on the bottom of the mountain. And I could hear the conversation, but it was pretty much quiet for the most time because people are already activating, moving to the site. And once I arrived to the bottom, I could see that the mountain was safe to approach and get to the patient. There was no other hazards of avalanches, so that made it quite a bit easier to deal with. There's no burial, there's nothing like that, so we were able to start the patient assessment immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and is that just kind of the luck of the draw, him not being buried and kind of like the way it all played out?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's the luck of the draw, it's just like what happens.
But he could have been buried, right?
Yeah, he also could have been dead. So, yeah. It's just, you know, we wouldn't have been riding the terrain if we knew there was the high chance of an avalanche that could bury you. We knew that there was a chance of isolated wind pockets, which is essentially impossible to mitigate because what an isolated wind pocket is just snow that has been deposited by the wind. And it all depends on like the direction of the wind, where it's picking up snow from, where it's depositing it, the texture and shapes of the mountain. So there's ways to mitigate that when you're skiing or snowboarding, and that's the way you ride down the mountain, or you ride different things. But yeah, he propagated a, maybe 100-foot wide wind pocket. I think he hit the weak point, and then it just propagated to the right of him. I'd say the crown where he broke it was 1 foot, and the biggest spot of it was maybe 4 or 5 feet. But the wind pockets, wind slab avalanches move really fast. It just shears completely in one piece, and that snow beat him to the bottom by quite a bit. So, yeah.
It's like he was at the top of the avalanche, kind of like.
Yeah, it broke, and he lost his skis, and the snow was already going down, and then he couldn't self-arrest. I don't know if he was going head first, tomahawking, or tumbling down the mountain, but
yeah,
hard to see in the cloud of snow.
Yeah, right. When you get down there, were you one of the people talking to him during this, once you got to where he had ended up?
Yeah.
And what were you saying to him?
Just talking to him, telling him that, he's alive, and we're going to do essentially a patient assessment just to check that there's nothing broken. You don't want to start moving someone in a way that's going to make the injuries worse, especially if it's spinal or to his neck. And it's hard he could move his legs and his arms, so we knew it wasn't anything to his extremities. But you also don't want to manipulate someone's body in a way that's going to cause more pain and discomfort, and possibly create worse injuries that could be like harder to manage. So, you just get to someone, you comfort them, tell them, hey, you're alive. You give a little bit of positive news, and then it's just open communication. Tell us what hurts, what you're feeling, if you're nauseous, if you're going to throw up. And then you just start working through a patient assessment, which is a medical way of just seeing what happened. And then after that, you start figuring out what the evac plans are, if they're needed.
And I guess like how well did you know, or how well do you know him? Like, what's your history of you? Is this a longtime friend?
He's a mountain friend. I've skied with him briefly in Thompson Pass, and we're not like lifelong friends, but we're friends.
Yeah. I see. And so, you're. It sounds like this was a very, the process of like, once everyone converged on him and was able to start going through the process of figuring out how serious the situation is. Sounds like it was a very, what's the word? Like, it sounded like you guys were very level-headed. You weren't like you said, no one was panicking or getting emotional, but is that still in the back of your mind at all? Like, even though you're going through the process and you're being, serious about it, like, was it in the back of your mind, like, any thoughts about what could be?
No, I mean, unfortunately, I have quite a bit of experience in these events. Not so much in the crews I ski with, but I've been called to assist for rescues, and I've run into people who've been in bad situations, and I've just never seen any benefit of panic or people complaining about the situation. Yeah. There were moments in my crew the other day where, there was some panic, there was some complaining, and I was like, hey, you're not the one that's injured, so let's focus on getting them help. Everyone else is secondary, but you can't dismiss other people's feelings or their needs, because it was a long day. It's emotionally and physically super taxing on the person. So you got to be comforting not only to the patient, but to the rest of the team as well. So, you just kind of remind everyone we're here to get him out as soon as possible, and then we could get out of here as soon as possible. And yeah.
What was the last time you talked to him? Was it out there in the snow?
I talked to him probably like 2 hours ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And visit him or just like text or talk?
He texted me this morning, but I visited him at the hospital the day after the accident.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Saturday it sounds like.
Yeah, Saturday
Okay,
morning.
and like, can you speak to what his thoughts, what his spirits are like? Is he mentally, is he doing okay, recovering? Like, how can you speak to what how he looks?
I think it's hard for me to say anything on his behalf because you never know what someone's thinking or going through, but I do know he's super grateful to be alive because, you know, people who ski in these kinds of terrain and have been in these kinds of accidents, either, you know, there's a high chance of dying or there's a high chance of having worse injuries, life debilitating injuries. So he's pretty grateful that his injuries were, as severe as they are, they're not anything that's going to keep him from skiing or living a healthy life in the future.
Yeah, it sounds like he's able, at least at this point, it sounds like he's able to, he's going to have that chance to recover fully. At least and get back to skiing soon, or at least at some point down the line.
Yeah.
Man, it's that would seem so scary to me if I was out there. But again, it seems like everything I'm hearing from you is just the experience and knowledge of you and the group you're with.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you guys, it was like the best people to have to help, to kind of assist in that situation, make sure, and you know, you guys knew what you were doing, I guess is what I'm saying. So.
Yeah. I mean, it could always be better, but it's no matter how prepared or an expert you are for something, it's always a learning experience. And then you just improve on that, on top of that for future situations.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I guess the one thing that I guess we should touch on is just the reality of Alaska
mm-hmm.
and the backcountry experience here.
Absolutely.
For people is a lot of people only focus on the mitigating of avalanche danger, and sometimes it creates a tunnel vision where people are only focused on that. But a lot of people, in my opinion, might not have the resources or the training for what to do when hits a fan. And a lot of the deaths that have happened in the backcountry, not only in Alaska, but in the rest of the world, is because of that. There's not been proper training or experience on what to do. And if there has been, then a lot of the deaths that have occurred have been because there's been a miscommunication between different government agencies that create a huge delay. So let's just say, for an example, if the injury that the skier in our group sustained, if they're any more severe, the chance of him passing would have been a lot higher because of the miscommunication between the 911 dispatch and the trooper. Because we asked for a hoist line, they sent life med, and that cost us 4 hours of our time. And when they figured out that we needed a hoist line after a bunch of hours, they sent the PJs in, and it was in and out in 30 minutes. So
is this something that needs to be a deeper conversation between responding agencies?
Yeah, there's been a lot of debriefing between the ANG, the RCC, the 911 dispatch, and the troopers, and I'm not too sure where LifeMed has been in this whole thing, but what I've talked to Travis about, because he was on the phone, and I was also speaking to the people on the phone via the radio, and essentially Travis and I made it so clear to the point where there's no confusion or miscommunication, and he had good enough service that he was able to send photos of where things were. Mm-hmm. So once you get photos and you have a clear description of, we need a hoist line, those exact words, you can't not send a hoist line.
Yeah.
So
why do you think a hoist line wasn't sent at first? If he made it clear, how come?
Because the 911 dispatch and the trooper did not pass that information on, and they pushed for LifeMed. Mm-hmm. I think there's politics involved there because it's a private company. I don't know what the inner workings of that are, but it's cost a lot of people lives.
Yeah.
I have friends who've lost their friends from similar issues in the mountains here. And I mean, you always call 911 on an emergency. Their job is to relay the information to the appropriate agency to do a rescue. So it was a big screw up, pretty much.
Yeah. I know we're having like.
I guess all I'm trying to say is there needs to be a way to share the right resources and contacts. And I've been talking to a lot of the PJs from the rescue that we were on and others who are involved. And they just said, you know, when someone asks for a hoist line, you got to send a helicopter with a hoist line. You don't waste someone's time on both ends, our group's time, the patient's time, but also anyone else out there who might have benefited from LifeMed. Because you're wasting everybody's time and money.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, do you feel like there could also be just a better knowledge? Because when you mentioned, when you and your friend mentioned that we need a hoist line, for example,
Yeah.
is that do you think there's maybe a miscommunication or just a lack of knowledge of the folks you were talking to, not understanding, you know, what exact? I mean, I don't know how else
Yeah.
to. You sounds like you made it very clear to them.
Yeah.
Is there any backcountry knowledge that they need to have? I guess.
Well, a hoist line isn't necessarily backcountry knowledge.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
It's a hoist line. It is what it is, and if the people who are on the 911 dispatch or the state troopers don't know what that is, then they should go get a different job, because it's a pretty common term. It's the definition of what a long line rescue is. So, yeah, I mean, there's no more ways to make it clear. And, you know, if you can't get what you need out of 911, then you call the RCC. RCC has one person. They got one person on the phone staff 24/7, and there's only one person on the line. So you just keep calling the RCC, which is the Rescue Communication Center of Alaska.
Yeah, or Coordination Center, isn't it?
Yeah, I forget the definition, but yeah. But the 99% of people, when there's an emergency, they call 911.
Right.
And I just like to...
And that's where you started, right? 911, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, I just told Travis, I'm like, hey, you got service up there? Can you call in for an evac with a hoist line? And he called 911. 911 transferred him to the state trooper. The state trooper said, okay, we're going to send help. And it was just a lot of back and forth with the state trooper and LifeMed. It didn't work out. Then he stopped talking to the state trooper, called 911, called the RCC. RCC didn't answer, so back to 911. And there was a lot of back and forth, and eventually ANG said, hey, we're going to send the PJ in because this is what should have happened from the first step. When someone calling the state trooper, RCC, 911 calls and asks for a hoist line, they send the appropriate vehicle that has one. And I know LifeMed might be working on trying to get one, so then it would have made sense. But
when you said, I think you said earlier that you feel like there's politics involved.
Yeah.
I think, is that like, are you able to clarify, or what are the thoughts on that? Like, why do you what exactly do you mean?
I think what I mean by that there's politics involved in these types of situations is when there's a private entity, a company who benefits off of insurance, let's say. Obviously, they're going to want to make money off of a evac. Not that that's what their intentions are, but you know, you get rescued by the PJs, it's free. If not, you're paying $40,000 from LifeMed. So
you think that their first, sometimes the go-to is a private company when it shouldn't be.
yeah, I mean, you see how the insurance in this country is.
So that could have cut the rescue operation or the rescue time from 5 hours to, would you say, like an hour possibly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this case, it wasn't deadly, but in some cases it would be.
Yeah, I mean, people have died from these incidents of, I wouldn't say greed, but miscommunication and sending the wrong rescue teams out there, and by the time that the PJs did arrive, it was already nighttime, it was dark. And luckily those guys are super trained for evacs and rescues in any conditions. They showed up with night vision goggles, and you know, they got everything. So it's great that they are here, because it does help a lot of these people who are in emergency situations. And yeah, I don't know what the way to solve these kinds of issues are, and I think that's the main reason we made this whole incident public, because we could have easily just not told anyone about the avalanche, taken our friend to he would have been taken to the hospital, we wouldn't have told anyone about it. But it's a learning experience, and we just don't want other friends or strangers to die due to someone else's incompetence in the backcountry. And it's also a wake-up call that people should focus on other type of training besides only avalanche training. Rescue, knowing the right protocols for stabilizing a patient and proceeding with an evac, because it's those things, if they're done properly to a patient who isn't dead, you could potentially save their lives. Right. And yeah, I've seen a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of horror stories of people dying because these steps weren't done, because people lacked experience, or because the communication with the rescue agencies was terrible.
Right.
So.
I'm glad we talked about, the whole, the frustration of dealing with, you know, sort of the rescue operation and why it was delayed more than it had to be. But from what I understand, I forget where I saw this, if this is in the report or if this was something.
The report was kind of confusing to read, because I had a long meeting the morning of with Chugat Chavi, and you know, they had snowboarder 1, 2, 3, 4, skier 1, 2, 3, 4, party 1, party 2, party 2 had like one skier, one snowboarder. So people who are reading it, I read it and I was there, and I was like, this is kind of confusing, but there's no other way to write it if you're trying to be anonymous. And the reason, you know, I think it's good to keep the whole crew anonymous is because we don't need to focus on the individual, so we could start pointing fingers of like, you did this wrong or you did that wrong, and focus more on, you know, these situations happen, what can we learn from it, and how could people prevent things from being worse the next time they go out? Because eventually someone's going to be in an accident, and like for avalanches, you have a beacon, probe, and shovel. You carry that all the time. Most people will never use that in their whole life.
Yeah.
It's like your airbag in your car.
Right.
You got it, you pay for it, you got car insurance, you pay for it. You're most likely never going to use it.
But
until you need it.
It's good to have it.
Yeah. But then there's a whole post side of like, what do you do after you need it and your buddy needs help, medical and evac.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. I guess I think from what I understand, it was a spinal injury or something. Yeah, broke fractured pelvis and 2 fractured vertebrae. Right. So the pelvis and the vertebrae. That's what I saw. Yeah. Man, but otherwise, yeah. I mean, that's tough injuries, but
he's a tough guy, though.
Is he?
Yeah. And that's the thing, when a tough guy who does extreme sports outside of skiing, who's broken a lot of bones, if he or she say that their pain is 10 out of 10, then, you know, it's really bad.
Wow.
Yeah, and the dangerous thing about fractured pelvis that most people don't know is you have the femoral artery, and if for the majority of hip dislocations or pelvis fractures, you could pinch or sever the femoral artery, and you could bleed out within 10-15 minutes. I'm guesstimating those numbers, but it's pretty serious.
Yeah, no, that's the femoral artery is a lot of blood flow through there.
Yeah. So, you know, I guess that's the main reason why a lot of us are so upset with beyond our mistakes of, you know, leaving the house and being in an avalanche, which is out of our control, trying to have fun in the mountains, but it's just the lack of professionalism from all agencies besides the RCC and the ANG, because it would have cost him his life.
Yeah.
If anything, like, a little bit worse were to happen.
Thank you to Rafael Pease for sitting down with us, and thank you for listening to In Depth Alaska. Pease's statements and opinions are his own and do not represent Alaska's news source. Please follow this story on alaskasnewssource.com.